guest speaker coming in. So it's Jennifer Vessels. Thank you for coming here. She is from Silicon Valley and now living in Oslo. And she has led like growth of like big companies like Tandberg, Cisco, Google, and led change for hundreds of companies globally. And she is going here to inspire us on how to deal with change in new ways. And we know in the industry these days, there's a lot of change, just looking at AI and everything, right? So stuff is changing. How do we adapt and deal with it? So just some quick practical information. I shared in chat right now. If you have any questions during the session, like if it's urgent, you can raise your hand or just write the question in chat and we'll follow. And then at the end, we'll also try to have like a question block. And if you are not comfortable with that, feel free to use the anonymous question form that I just posted. We'll look at that one and ask questions from there as well. Yeah. With that said, I'll be quiet and hand it over to you. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Happy 2025, the beginning of a new year and a new era that brings a lot of opportunities for success, for growth, and for navigating through change. The one thing that we know about this year is that there will be change globally, within our industry, probably within our companies, and for some of us personally. The question is that good or bad? Through the next 50 minutes, my goal is to help you see that change can be very positive and equip you with some ideas, perspectives, and some tools that you can use to shift from crisis to opportunity when change happens. Let's start with a story about one of my clients, a gentleman who was born in Hyderabad, India, grew up known as that young man that was always thinking differently, asking questions. What if? Why can't? Let's do things differently. And developed a real passion and a personal purpose, if you will, for making a difference positively in the world. He went to engineering school, learned to be a coder, ultimately went to America and got a master's degree in technical leadership and joined Apple and moved gradually up the ranks, taking on innovation projects when possible. It eventually shifted over to Adobe and was in engineering leadership over 10 years. At the end of 2007, he was moved into his dream job as CEO of Adobe, the world's leader in creativity, recognized as a highly significant player and very repeatable model for growing revenue, high expectations. He structured his teams, he brought in new people, he had lots of ideas and a beautiful plan for where he wanted to go the next 5-10 years. Shortly along the way, the world changed. There was a global financial crisis. Companies restructured. New technology came into the market. The iPad, people started thinking differently about where and how they create. And revenues plummeted. Companies were not interested in spending money in the way they had in the past. Now, everybody had an opinion and an idea. Back when we had the last crisis, this is what we did. You should restructure. You should think about this. The board, the investors were adamant. Cut cost. Do this. Do more. Find ways to get people to buy. This was a real crisis. Shantanu didn't react. He didn't try all of those things. Instead, he took a step back out of the flurry and the fray. And he went for a walk. And he started thinking about, what do I personally really want to achieve? How am I going to, in this day and age, knowing that the world has changed and it's not going to go back, how can I really make a difference and turn things around and shift the way we do business based on the way customers want to buy in this new reality? And he had some ideas. Then he reflected back to the mission of the company that he was chartered with taking forward. And he said, no, hang on a second. This mission is to enable creativity for all, delivering real experiences that empower people. That's what I believe in. This doesn't say sell software, which is what the company's been doing and what the board and everybody's asking me to do. So we went back into the office and he brought together his team. And he said, we know the world has changed. We can't go back. Let's focus now on how we can achieve the mission of the company and our purpose. Let's look at this through a different lens. And when they understandably said, well, how do you expect us to actually do this? His answer was, I don't have all the answers. None of us do. But I expect us to explore, to think differently, to leave the past behind, get together in small tiger teams, mixing engineering with sales with marketing, and think about what if. And when we've got some ideas about maybe we sell small features for small amounts of money, maybe it's pay as you go, then we're going to go out and we're going to talk to customers and get their view. And when we think we have something that's feasible in a matter of days or weeks, not months or years, we're going to try it. Just try it in a small, little, new way and see what happens. And then come back together and share. This worked, this didn't work, that tanked big time. Okay, based on that, now let's think about how we can take this forward. We'll shift away from what tanked and we'll expand on these things and we'll try something again. And we'll continue to explore, try, and revive. That was a process that was carried on for 2 years, engaging and embracing, and ultimately led to a completely new way of delivering software to customers, enabling creativity for people around the world. The actual purpose, as opposed to following the steps that had been followed in the past. And it led to very positive results, which the board and obviously the investors have been very, very pleased with the way looking at things differently has turned the company into a completely different type of organization. Now, looking back in 2008, 9, 10, things looked pretty dull. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do now? The world is coming to an end. But by shifting the mindset, shifting the perspective from it's a crisis, the end of the world, we got to somehow go back to the way we were, shifting it to say, hey, maybe this is an opportunity. We can actually change. We can do much more in a new way it was successful, hugely successful. And I would suggest for all of us today, when changes come, we need to think about, is this really a crisis? Or might it bring an opportunity for us to do something differently? Which means we need to step out of business as usual. Step away. Take some time. Don't react. Don't get caught up in all of the hoopla of, oh my God, this is the end of the world. And this is, oh my gosh, how did they do that? And why did she do this? And blah, blah, blah. It's walk away from that. Step out. Go take that walk. Let the ideas flow in your mind of what might this mean for me. Now, some of you may be saying, that's not always easy. Because as soon as something changes, my brain says, oh shit, it's the end of the world. And that is natural. Because within our brains, we have a lot of complicated processes. And there is a part, it's actually a very small part of our brain in the back called the substantia nigra. And that's the part of our brain that drives us into a business as usual mode. It looks for the repeat routine patterns. It looks for things that we can do easily, using less energy than jumping out of those patterns. It's also the part that generates the dopamine. So when we're following the steps and we check off the to-do list each day, we feel good. That's coming from that little part of the brain that likes to keep us in those boxes. So when change happens and we start to say, I don't want to keep fighting against this, there might be an opportunity, that little part kind of pushes us down. It's like, it's going to be too difficult. It's going to take too much energy. We had change last year and it didn't come out good. It starts arguing with us. And so that when that happens, we do, as humans, want to just hide away. And the idea of change fatigue comes. I'm done, I'm finished. I want to run away. But in a world where everything is changing rapidly, we can't run away from everything. And ultimately, that's not a good idea. So instead, I would suggest mentally fight against that tendency and say, I'm just going to try this. I'm going to think of this as a possible opportunity. And at least think about exploring how this might help me get to my purpose and what I want to achieve. And when you start thinking that way, you begin to engage the other part of your brain, the frontal vortex, that is much larger. That's about 60-70% of the capacity in our brain that we often don't use because we follow that little stay in the pattern and get the dopamine, checking things off. But when we start to say, this may create an opportunity for me to do more of what I want to do, we begin to engage that side. And that side of our brain is the creativity. It's the innovation. It's the think big. It's to do things. That's where young people, children, spend most of their time before they learn to follow the routines and stay in the box. Those that have kids know that every moment there's a question of, why can't we do that? What if? How about let's just try it? That's coming from that prefrontal vortex of the brain. That opens us up to new ideas. So when that change comes at you, when you get frustrated, feeling like I want to do what I set out to do, take that step back because you do have a choice. Think about, do I really want to hide away and stress and feel bad about this? Because I can. Or do I want to accept that this is the reality? The organization has changed. The project has been canceled. Accept it. Leave it for what it is and begin to think about what opportunity might this bring for me? And begin in that shift to unleash that creativity. Unleash the what ifs, what could be possible, and draw that idea out for yourself. And in doing so, go for that walk. Long walk. And think deeply about for yourself. What am I really trying to achieve? What is most important here? And as you think about that, begin to process, begin to let that prefrontal vortex work on the question of how might this change actually be good for me? This might actually propel me further along if I let go of the boxes, let go of needing to check things off, let go of what has been, and think differently. So, as change happens to each of us, as we know it will, I encourage you to start with the purpose, as Shantanu did, as each of us can do, by avoiding the tendency to react, stepping away from all of the chatter and the why don't we should, you should. Step away and think about, what does this really mean for me? And allow yourself the time, the mental capacity, the creativity to explore. How might I turn this into a positive? And then try something. Try something different. What's the worst that can happen? You try a new project and you fail. Great, try something different. Take action. Begin to do things in new ways. And collaborate. No one of us anywhere in the world knows exactly what's going to happen during 2025 or 6 or 7 or 8. We're in this world together. And we have an opportunity to encourage, challenge, and support each other to think differently. Asking colleagues, are you viewing this as a crisis or an opportunity? What might this do for us? How might this new department help you get to your goals? What's possible? Thinking big. And in doing so, we begin to empower others. those who are in leadership roles. You know that the people that report to you and work with you look up to you and look at how is he or she handling this change. When you say, yes, it changed, and just think about what it can allow us to do. Exploring opportunities, you begin to shift the mindset and the vibe through the organization to say, this is a good thing. This is a positive for us. So it takes commitment and it takes energy. But by shifting from crisis to opportunity and then approaching and embracing, not just dealing with, but embracing each change that comes as an opportunity with peace, aligning on what you're trying to get to, exploring, acting, trying little things, small steps, collaborating with others to get outside viewpoints, and empowering people to see that change is positive. It might not seem so today or tomorrow, but in the end, you will get to a new place that aligns with your purpose. I've used this model with hundreds, if not thousands, of people around the world. And they have achieved significant results in their career, in their company, and in their lives just by turning that dial. So I invite you to do so. And it looks like we may have some questions in the chat that I will turn over to the gentleman here to see what questions we have.
Yeah.
And then I'm happy to dialogue deeper into any aspect of this.
Yes. Let me also, because I know people won't see Teams messages until they join, so let me just reshare this anonymous question. URL in chat. Just click that one if you have questions you want to ask anonymously, else just type into chat. And the comments have been, I guess we can start here. There was one comment that said like shifting from crisis to opportunity focused mindset is indeed interesting / inspiring. It might be hard to prove a causal link between this mind shift and actually be successful though, because there's many confounding factors. It was more of a comment.
Okay.
Yeah, and then a comment as well here, more than a question again from Gianna saying the real inspiration is seeing how people adapt to new realities in war zones after
Yes.
catastrophic events, right?
Yes.
Responding to immense challenges with resilience and ingenuity. And that one we're sadly seeing a lot.
We are sadly seeing a lot, but
Yep.
I've actually in the last couple of years, partly due to having an aunt that grew up during that time in Germany, have looked at a lot of what happened in Germany a number of years ago, as we know. And while for 8, 10, 12, 14 years, there was a lot of challenge and a lot of reason to consider significant crisis. People that came through that, including survivors of some of the camps, have said that as they look back, they gained ultimately so much by being creative in exploring. How can I survive today? How can I take the right actions? What can I do to get to the next level? And I think there is a lot that people in those situations can accomplish for themselves by breaking things down. Many times when there's a war or there's huge change, we tend to over exaggerate. The world is coming to an end. Well, it's not. We just have to take it one little step at a time, one day at a time. Think about what I can accomplish, how it's going to get me to that purpose, whether that's to achieve the next role or whether that's to survive the day. how can I take those small steps? And being confident in yourself. A lot of this comes through building your own confidence, your own belief system that, yes, I can do this. I can overcome whatever is thrown at me. So going inside, aligning with what you're trying to achieve goes a very, very long way.
I guess we all experienced this with COVID, right?
Yes.
Everything changing.
It's a very, very good point. And we've all come through that period. We've all been a lot more innovative in how and where we work. And look at how far the technology industry grew just through that period. So there's always a positive. It's just how you look at it and how you address it.
There's also, we got one anonymous question here.
Okay.
Somewhat related as well. Is it true that people growing up in challenging environments often develop greater adaptability and resilience, enabling them to handle big changes with more ease? They're more likely to embrace change as an opportunity, while others may struggle or feel paralyzed.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's partly they learn through experience, which is honestly the way we all learn. We don't necessarily learn from listening to somebody like me talk or reading a book. You get insight, but you learn when you try it. And so people that have had that experience of growing up or living through difficult situations learn ways to survive. They learn how to adapt, and they build that inner confidence, that belief system that I can do this. Honestly, a lot of this is the mind. It's how do we actually look at it, talk to ourselves, and move ourselves forward. So they build both of those elements.
Oh, great. Another question in chat a bit earlier was, the question is how to achieve this even when you don't have or see an imminent catastrophic situation.
I would say you're in a good position in that in that area. Break it down for small things. I mean, just little parts of our day. I don't know about you all, but for me, I sometimes have this envision in my mind of what I'm going to have for dinner. And I've thought all day about this fabulous pasta I'm planning to have with shrimp and cheese, and it's going to be great. I get home and discover that the shrimp I thought I was going to put on the pasta is not, it's left its expiration date a long time ago, let's say. And there is that human reaction of, darn, I just want to go to bed and forget the whole thing about dinner. I don't want to rethink all of this again. Well, there's probably a better way. And by the way, I have some nice vegetables, and I've been saying I need to eat more vegetables. Why don't I make vegetable pasta instead? And when I go to bed, I accomplished two things here. I fed myself and I got the veggies in. This is good. Think about it about little changes, because the more you practice on a daily basis, the better you get at this and the more confidence you build. Little tiny things. If you're planning to go out for a walk on a beautiful Saturday afternoon and it turns into snow and ice and sleet like it's quickly doing here, adapt. What might this mean? It gives me an opportunity to go to the museum instead. And I've been intending to do that, and I want to learn more about culture. So use it for small things.
There's two new anonymous questions here, and I kind of want to do both at the same time because they're kind of related. So one of them is a follow-up of the previous question, anonymous question, which asks about like, hey, if you're growing up in like difficult circumstances. So follow-up. What can be said then about like protected environments like Norway? Are Norwegians likely to collapse when something surreal happens?
It's a great question. Overall, I would say that people who grow up in a rapidly changing, challenging environment are more naturally agile and have built that skill and that confidence such that that would lead to saying people that have grown up in the last 50 years in Norway when things have been very structured, very methodical, and very safe are in a more vulnerable situation should a catastrophe happen because they don't have that experience. So by taking those little steps now before, God forbid, there becomes a catastrophe, taking those little steps now will help you to have that capability and that mindset.
Yeah. And it's not a follow-up question, but it's also an anonymous, which is a nice segue, or like this is a nice segue into this question is, so assuming this cerebral cortex is not a muscle, how can it be trained?
The best way to train any part of us is through use. And remembering that it's there is the first step. Keep in mind that our society is very structured today. Personally, I believe we globally are still stuck in living in an industrial age mindset. People work certain hours in certain boxes and do certain tasks, and you check off certain things and you get a bonus. That's a very outdated, in many ways, mindset. But it really supports that back part of our brain that likes to follow the routine and uses less energy. So it's overall challenging as a society when that's the norm, the way of operating. It's challenging for people in this society to step out and to say, you know, I hear you, but I'm going to take a different path. I respect where you're going, but I'm going to think differently. I'm going to go for that walk. I'm going to be creative. I'm going to think openly. And when we think about the future of work with a lot more hybrid, integrated, global teams working around what is needed and the objective and the purpose of the team and the company, that's more of a circular, if you will. It's a creative, it's an energy. It's using that prefrontal vortex like children do before we put them into the boxes. That asking what if, how about, let's try it. What's the worst that could fail? That could happen if we fail. Being open to that. So by first recognizing that there's that option, it's stay in the box and view this as a crisis, or get out of the box, think of it as what might be possible. The more we do that, we train our brains to lean in that direction. It becomes habit. And that habit kind of goes into those little routines that say, we like to do things the same way. And as we do that more and more, that just becomes the way you look at the world. You can shift. You can move into this new world, which is where I believe organizations that will really thrive in the future are in that more of a circular, creative, innovation mindset.
Yeah, great. There's also some more discussions, great discussions in chat. Like we talked about, yeah, the what to do, for instance, if you're not in like a state of like emergency or something like that. There's a comment here, like we often say that forcing change is easier when in crisis or felt crisis, which we kind of talked a bit about. I personally look at it as what are we trying to achieve? For instance, problems with the product, targets we have, etc., and how can we try new things to move faster, etc. And if not in crisis, set ambitious targets and goals to establish a purpose, both personally and professionally.
Yes. Yes, that's totally spot on. Now, one of the questions I'm often asked when I talk with groups around change, and maybe it's in some of your minds, is how can I get somebody else to change? I know that this new project is going to go in a different direction, and it's clear that that's the mandate. I'm happy about it, but Johnny over here is determined, and he's unhappy, and he's fighting back. Firstly, when that happens, recognize that you cannot make another person change. We all change and adapt and shift our mindset when we choose to. So the idea of making him change, not a good idea. But what you can do is you can ask a lot of good questions to encourage and empower him to think differently. Questions such as, how do you see this project impacting your career? What might it help you learn? Who else do you follow that does things like this? A lot of questions so that he begins to see there may be some positive here. Invite him to go for a walk. Invite him for a coffee, to explore openly so that it comes from within himself. Ultimately, as people, we actually like change when we see the positives of it, when we see it can help us. We don't like that feeling that change is foisted on us. Think about for yourselves if you've ever been in a personal relationship. If the other person came home one day and said, "This is not working for me, I want to split," you probably, if you're like me, you probably felt pretty darn bad. Whereas if you'd been out thinking and talking and exploring and realizing this relationship is not helping me get where I want to be, and you were the one that came home and said, "This is not working for me, I'm sorry," then you have a different perspective. So shift your mindset so that you can see this is a change that can lead to good. It's my choice to lean in and explore what it means to me.
Yeah, great. There's another question here as well in chat. I'll try to jump a bit back and forth between anonymous and chat. It's kind of given even distribution. And if I'm missing questions in chat, just maybe there's some I might have. What are the signs that we need to observe about the reality around us that ultimately leads to mind shift, and how to balance the previous mindset, so the one that brought us until some point, with the new one, the one that's trying to take us to the new one?
So, how to balance the old mindset?
Or look at the old mindset? Yeah, how to balance the old mindset with the new one?
Yeah. So I'm going to make a few assumptions that possibly a person was in a role on a project, doing something, going down the path, and then suddenly there's change coming or will come. In that case, firstly, thank yourself, get those dopamine pumps for what you've accomplished in the old way. There's nothing wrong with what you've done in the past. Nothing at all. But as you do that, recognize that was the past and accept that the world has changed. The project has gone away. The organization has shifted. Don't fight against it, which is our tendency. We want to fight for what's been working all this time. Recognize it's changed. Take that step away. And in taking that step away and giving your mind space without social media, without anybody talking to you, that's why I like to say, go for a walk, go somewhere away from the situation and give yourself time that will open those ideas. When you recognize, I'm going to leave behind what I have accomplished. It worked. Now I'm leaving it and opening your mind. If we think back to the story about Shantanu, he'd worked all of his life to get to this role, fabulous role, and spent a year and a half, 2 years building his team, his plans, his projects. A huge mindset shift to recognize that's simply not going to work. That's 2 years that I could look at as wasted time, but instead I'm going to look at as 2 years of investing in building a team, still got the team, building some ideas, getting to know the company. And now the reality is the world has changed. How am I going to take that forward? So leave the way it was, but take what you've learned, take that forward in a new way and a new direction. I often say to people, the first thing that you can start in this is just, even when you read something on social media or email that strikes you in a negative way, just think, I'm not going to react. I'm going to respond. And sometimes a response means taking that deep breath, go fill up the coffee cup, and go back and think about it and respond accordingly. Personally, I believe we all create our own crisis many times because we quickly jump into things. We're in that mindset, we've got our goals, we're feeling pressured, something comes and we jump in. Respond, not react, and give yourself time to step away.
I love that. There's another anonymous question.
Yeah.
Please comment on the adaptability to the extreme cognitive load we are facing due to tech, new speed of life, and AI becoming.
Oh, big question. I would summarize that as saying, in light of everything that is happening and changing, how do you prioritize? How do you really put the mental energy and capacity and your time on the things that are most important? And that does start with purpose. Think about outside of Microsoft, outside of the world, what is most important to me to achieve? What do I really need to do? And then think about your job, your role, your team, and Microsoft. What's most important to us? What can we impact today, this week, this month? Break it down in small pieces and put your energy and your mental capacity on the things where your purpose, your team, your company, and your role can have the greatest impact in small pieces. It's so easy to get overwhelmed. So easy to get overwhelmed, but break it down and keep the focus.
Great. There's also just some more comments in chat. This is a bit back to the previous one about like war zones. Just want to highlight this as well from Jenna. Says about war zones, it still impresses me seeing images of people on social media dancing in nightclubs in Kyiv, my hometown, and taking a quick run to bomb shelters between when the alarm goes off. Just showing like an example of.
Yeah, I completely agree. And to me, that's one of those that the best thing is to simply jump over it. You can't change another person by not responding at all. In some cases, you're setting a new standard.
Yeah. And there's also a comment. Do you want to, Jakob, since you're in the room and you comment this one, do you want to?
No, it's just like.
Yeah, there's one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one comment was challenging environment versus protected. So my assumption is that on average, some are better prepared from challenging environments, but at the same time, there are more of the ones who cannot cope with it. Then they need mental help but are not getting it, especially not in the amounts available in more protected environments.
I would suggest that just about anything that comes at you, you can leverage this model as a framework. I mean, for example, I personally just this week experienced a case where I was feeling a bit overwhelmed. We have a new client that was and is quite interesting, fascinating company. What they're doing aligns with my purpose, making a difference on the planet. And we had a huge project we were working towards putting in place. I also have a lot of keynote speeches I'm doing at conferences, a number of other clients I'm involved with. And I admit now, retrospectively, I was feeling a little bit overwhelmed, but I was so excited about this new client. And all of a sudden on Monday evening, I learned that they've made some changes internally and are not interested at all in what we were proposing to offer. You know, there was a moment of, oh dear, I've wasted all of this time. It was going to be a very lucrative project. We have people lined up to work on it that are disappointed. Hey, it's the end of the world. But by Tuesday, Wednesday, I started to explore, okay, so if this doesn't come to fruition, then how's that going to impact me? And I was also processing, now hang on, my purpose is to make a difference for people going through change at this point in time. If that's my purpose this year, how can I best achieve that? Well, probably through doing more keynotes, interfacing with more people, facilitating more executive discussions. Would I have really had time to have done that if I was running this huge project with 30 people working on it? No. So maybe this is a good thing. But I'm still kind of curious what happened with the project. So I called the guy yesterday morning. And he said, well, I'm glad you called because we're putting our strategy in place now. And there's a couple of things we'd like to involve you all in if you're open to it. A win-win.
No catastrophe.
Exactly. Whereas had I Tuesday gone storming back to him, well, you told me this and we had an agreement to do this. I mean, that would never have happened. I stepped away. I thought about it differently. I explored. If this new project comes about, great. If it doesn't, that's also great. So just break things down, avoid the reaction, and focus on what's important. There's a ton of things that we can all do, but that may not be the best for you.
Comment there is it reminds me a bit of if you know Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
Right, like to start with why also, right? Like that's the beginning of everything. That's what's the purpose. Yeah.
Completely agree. Completely agree. And it's so easy today to get sucked into the stream of activity The coulda, woulda, shoulda, must try to do everything, social media. Step away. Step away.
There's also in chat here, Yenya says, like, I've heard about such things as a change junkie. Okay, the novelty, thrill, and dopamine-seeking people thriving in constantly changing environments and losing all motivation in stable ones. And that's more like, anyone else hear about this? Raise your hand. And there's some comments about that. So
interesting, interesting. And to be honest, I would say it's a fascinating concept and interesting to go back and research. But so within our brains, we've got that substantia nigra, the part that likes routine. It almost would seem for people of that nature that they've gone through so much change that change has become the norm. And they're actually indeed getting the dopamines by changing because they're following the same patterns, the habits they're following by constantly changing, as opposed to thinking about, do I need to change? I mean, if something's working, don't mess with it. If it's achieving your purpose, if it's aligning to your why.
yeah. There's also one more question we had here. Let me see if I find it. So why do intelligent, energetic, not lazy parentheses people like to stay in their comfort zone doing familiar things when they know alternative or new approaches will deliver better results?
I would say the biggest reason people stay in that comfort zone is that their substantia nigra is fueling them in that zone. That's where the patterns, that's where the habits have been. And they've gone so deep into the over and over. This is the way it is. And probably they're surrounding themselves with a lot of people that are in similar modes. And so they're getting feedback of this is the right thing, this is comfortable, that it makes it harder to jump out. So if you know someone in that zone, it goes back to asking them to think about what could be possible. If you didn't watch the same series every night of the week on Netflix, what might you do? Well, I might go out for a beer, or I might learn to ski. I might do something different. What would that be like, do you think? How about if we give it a try? How about if we bring in a couple of other people that like to ski on Thursdays? Because you have to retrain those wires that there is a different routine. The more deeply we go, the further we get.
Another reason as well why it's so important having like diverse people around you as well to get those.
Exactly, to get more ideas and having conversations with people. And that's why I would encourage you after this session, talk with your colleagues. What do you see your purpose and what you're trying to achieve this year to be? How might you further your progress towards that through the role that you're in? What are you doing differently to try something outside of the comfort zone? Maybe we challenge each other to check in every couple of weeks and see how we're doing towards our purpose. And maybe we bring a few more people into the equation as we go forward. It's just shifting that pattern. And as leaders, those that have people that report to them, this is a great opportunity at the beginning of the year to have open conversations with your employees, not the metadata Sertala to talk about their performance, but to just chat about their goals for the year. Where do you really want to be personally at the end of the year? And really listen to their answers. Deeply listen, ask questions, demonstrate that you care. And where possible, as managers, over the year, as things change and shift and new projects come, remember, Sally had a goal for this year to learn more about AI and how it can be applied. We have a need for somebody to do some research on AI. Why don't we give that project to Sally? The leaders that will be the most successful in 25 and beyond are those that really understand and know their employees and align the employee's goal and purpose with the team and the companies. That's where it's a real win-win when you bring those things together.
This is great. I think we're through all the questions. I don't see any more anonymous ones in the chat. There's a lot of good discussions there. I haven't had time to kind of update everything, but a lot of good discussion. People have been sharing a lot of like different resources and stuff.
Perfect. And I would love for anybody that wants to share their frustrations, examples, questions. I mean, feel free to reach out. And yeah, I really, really appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation and very much appreciate the chat and the discussions. That's where the real learning comes. It's from thinking about it, applying it, and going out and doing it. So I encourage you all to think about your purpose. Explore. What can this year bring as a way of getting there? Try something different. Collaborate and ultimately empower others to embrace change because it is an opportunity, not a threat.
Fantastic. And on that, we're on time as well. Perfect timing. So just quickly, just practically, in chat, there's a couple of forums. The one is just an anonymous feedback forum to help us get feedback on this session. And also, if you know anyone who would like to be a speaker as well as part of Lunch and Learn, Jakob just shared a forum as well. Please help with that. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining. Lots of great questions, great discussions, and especially thank you, Jennifer. This has been fantastic. Yeah, Cesar, if you have any questions to Jennifer as well, reach out.
Perfect.
And then thank you all for joining, and we'll see you in the next Lunch and Learn session. Remember to subscribe on Eventify so you'll get all the events automatically, and then see you next time. Oh yeah, Jenny, you had a hand, or was that for applause?
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. This is great.
Cool. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Super. Thank you.